Okay, so I'm here with Caroline Cotto, and my first interview subject on the new podcast as well. So you're privileged, or I'm privileged, I don't know which.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Thanks for agreeing to this. We only decided to do this on, I think, Thursday last week. So it's kind of a quick turnaround, and I'm going to try and get it out tonight, our time. So it'll be out your afternoon as well, because we don't do any editing or anything like that. So just so people know who you are, and I'm trying to think how I know you and what I know about you, but maybe you can introduce yourself in just a couple of minutes for us.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm Caroline Cotto. I'm a singer, songwriter, guitarist, poet, and I'm here to talk about music, life, truth, dreams, and whatever the muse leads us.
Sounds fabulous. Yeah, it should be more like a conversation. I don't like to think of it as an interview. It's more of a conversation. We have been talking on sort of text messages all week, haven't we, preparing for this?
We have.
And I know you've gone through some arduous preparations today with your various accoutrements and so on. So we're very privileged to have you here. Most of our listeners, I'm expecting, are going to be in England, which I know you know quite well, and I think that's how we got to know each other a little bit. But I think a lot in Tennessee as well. But you're in Louisiana, aren't you? You're in New Orleans.
Yes.
And how long have you been there?
It's going to be 8 years in June.
Wow.
It feels like a lifetime. 8 years ago, I came here. I didn't know anyone. I came here with my guitar and suitcase, and I built myself from the ground up. And I feel like I'm in the best place of my life. It's just magic. I think that's the magic of the city. It really, when it calls you, and once you're here, so many opportunities of growth and rebirth are at your fingertips.
I mean, it's an amazing place. It's obviously very famous even here. It's internationally famous as a creative and a French sort of influenced area as well. But you're from New York originally. So the first question really is about New York, deciding to leave New York at a very young age. And where did you go from there? Where was your first port of call after leaving New York City?
Well, I was a very peculiar child. I always loved the golden age. I always loved music from I feel like it's the Renaissance period, like music from the 50s and 60s. There was just an abundance of incredible music and incredible artists in these cities at certain times that just created magic. And growing up, when I discovered this music around the early 2000s, I was just amazed. And I felt alone because a lot of children my age, that wasn't the popular music of the time. But when I heard this music, I was like, this is the golden sound. These are the sounds that are speaking to me. And I felt that deep intensity at a young age. So it was hard to deal with, as a child, where you're expected to have this innocence and have a wide-eyed, fun view of life. But I immediately was dealing with these profound things because I was just attracted to this incredible music. I wanted to know, how was this music made? Who were these people? Who were these people influenced by? And this is what I always wanted to talk about, but I didn't find others. So it was a lot. It was heavy for me as a child because I was dealing with this and I didn't know how to express it. And then I thought to myself, I could express it through music. And then once after college, I went to New York University, and I just felt, okay, I don't know what to do. I had my graduation. I watched The Graduate. I was like, let me just watch The Graduate. It seems very fitting. And after I watched The Graduate, I just had a moment where I felt, okay, I need to go to Paris, because my whole life I listened to music that came there. I loved artists that lived there. From the 1920s, like Hemingway went to Paris, Fitzgerald, all these incredible minds went to this place for their freedom and for discovery and to be inspired. And I knew I had to do that too. It just wasn't satisfied. I felt confined in New York because I loved this music, and I felt like I had to go to the roots of it all and have that discovery in this modern time.
So I think that maybe helps me understand myself a little bit. So I feel a lot of people from the 80s, from my era, are pulled towards America. The high budget, high quality films and stuff we saw were all American. Whether it's easy stuff like Back to the Future and so on, or whether it's even the more like The Graduate as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're the films we were shown, and America always seemed this amazing place to me. It's quite different to the north of England, and you know the north of England, so you understand what that's like, right?
You do.
And you feel this kind of pull, and I guess that's the same for you. So for me, I think somebody 22 living in New York, you know, that's, why would you want to leave, right? But you felt a need. You felt that France was the wet place to go. So you just
Yes.
woke up one day and booked a plane and went to France.
Yes. Well,
Wow.
in high school, I started studying French, and we had to choose between, I think there was Latin, Spanish, Mandarin, and French just felt so romantic. I just love always learning the French language, and I just felt compelled. Some things are inexplicable. You just feel drawn to things, and the language felt very just romantic and beautiful to me. And I just started learning it, and I was really dedicated to it. I remember around my junior year of high school, my French teacher, who was very influential to me, he introduced to me the writings of Albert Camus, and I read The Stranger, and I was like, this writing is incredible, because the way he's writing is the way I've been feeling since I was a child. I was like, okay, I need to listen to this. I need to really study. So once I become interested in a topic or a writer, I become obsessive. So I want to read everything about it. And I started reading all his literature, and I really felt that way. And just dealing with like life questions and purpose. And so I was always attracted to the French language. And then in college, I also studied it, and I started just reading more French literature, Flaubert, Molière, and I really found,
Not easy.
I loved it. I remember in college, I wrote essays on Molière, like essays in French. Like I really just fell in love with the language. And then I started watching La Nouvelle Vague, French New Wave films. So I was like, this is just amazing, because it was different from old Hollywood films. Like the directors really had an eye, were really auteurs for like dealing with like life questions. They were examining life through these people and these situations. I think one of the first films I saw was Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard, and I was like, that film is just like the epitome of Parisian culture to me. It just you see Paris, and I was like, oh, I want to be there too, you know. And
Amazing.
I just became so enamored of how these directors depicted Paris and like dealing with life, you know, because the French New Wave, they were very philosophical, these directors. They weren't following the typical Hollywood scripts. They really broke the mold and did filmmaking their own way. So I just wanted to be surrounded by that. I was just like, I want to learn. I don't want to feel confined. And also in New York, I was writing music that was influenced by blues, and I didn't really find others that were playing blues music. So I felt like, okay, I'm like in my early 20s, you know, a teenager. I mean, I started playing open mics in New York City when I was very like a teenager. So I was playing very blues influenced music. I was writing very blues influenced music. So New York just the environment didn't nurture that type of genre. So, you know, that explains also the voyage to New Orleans eventually. But I had to go to Europe first, because that's where my influences started. And I love British music. I know we'll talk more about the Beatles and the British invasion, but that was truly the first music of my life were the Beatles.
Wow, there's so much to dig into there. So, I mean, you've read a lot of French stuff that I haven't read, and you've read it in French, not in English translation.
Yes.
That's quite something. It was there's a guy here who's quite famous in the 80s called Clive James, Australian guy, TV presenter, and he learned French by reading Proust. And he literally read it one word at a time with a dictionary next to him.
Wow.
After about 10 years, he'd read the first book or something. But he literally taught himself French by reading a French novel, which I thought was insane in a way. I mean, nowadays you just use Duolingo or something. But I thought, what a great idea. I tried to do it. I lasted about a week. I got it on my Kindle. Because on Kindle, you can just like do the translation straight away. But you actually read these in paperback, hardback, in French, in America, or did you wait till you got to France?
Well, since I've been studying since high school, I began my first introduction to French literature was through Albert Camus, And then once I was in college, I really started writing essays in French about, Molière, Racine, André Gide. I mean, I just loved all these French authors and poetry, like Rimbaud, Baudelaire. Like I just, I
This
read
is very strange.
I know, I read A Season in Hell, and I was like, I'm feeling this because I was a very just unusual child, because I just was fascinated by these dark topics, because I mean, I was really trying to figure out life, because a lot of people, they don't really dig into the surface, and I want to go deep into the surface. I want to figure out what makes us, what makes us feel.
God, I thought this was going to be an easy conversation, but that's quite a big question, isn't it?
Yes, I know.
Well, we just still the surface. You said you didn't want to go deep, wow. So the thing I find interesting is we have a perception of the South in America, but even of New York as well, everywhere in America, that you guys aren't really very interested in the world outside America. Now, maybe it's your sort of Latina heritage, or do you know? And people often ask me why am I into Americana, and particularly sort of more country-ish music than perhaps you're playing. Why do I like something? Why do I like anything in life? Why do I like these fizzy jellies that I've got in case my cough comes back? How can we ever answer that question, do you think? Is it sensible to think about that?
That's very interesting. Well, in your respect, I have to thank the British invasion for introducing me to American music. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have known about Chuck Berry, Elvis, John Lee Hooker, Muddy Waters, because in the 60s, once the Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, it opened a floodgate for other British bands. And I mean, I listened to everything. I listened to the Zombies, the Animals, the Kinks. I loved it all.
The Kinks, I like.
Yeah, and they were inspired by American music. The Beatles were covering. So I think they were the British band the most to cover Roll Over Beethoven by Chuck Berry. And
so you didn't hear of Chuck Berry first. You heard of him through the Beatles.
The Beatles, because that was the sounds of my childhood. My father, he was obsessed with the Beatles, and this is the profound effect of British culture on America. He grew up in the 60s in Harlem, New York, and when he first heard the Beatles, he was just in love with them, and he was, mimicking with a mop, playing guitar. He would just love. They was just so electrifying and explosive, even in New York and Harlem in the 60s. And then, so when I came around, and when I came around, he always played the Beatles. He would work all day, and then at night when he would come home, I would hear him strumming the guitar up and playing the Beatles songs, and I was like, "What's that? I like this music. I want to learn that." And then he started, playing more of the music and teaching me about the Beatles. And when he grew up in New York, he told me that he would see John Lennon and Paul McCartney all the time. He was like, that's just part of, you would see them walking in Central Park, and you would just wave at them, and sometimes they would wave back, and you have a little conversation. But that was like, that's how different New York was in the 60s. And it was just so cool, you know?
That's hard for me to get my head around. So the thing that strikes me there is that if you want to say it in a certain way, the Beatles were like this American covers band, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they wrote their own stuff, but it was influenced by the blues and so on. And I'm a big fan of, I'm looking around in case I've got any evidence of this, I'm a big fan of Fleetwood Mac, the later Stevie Nicks Fleetwood Mac. But
I'm a big fan of Peter Green.
Well, I was going to say, you can trace it back to Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, the blue, and that was a Chicago blues band, effectively.
Yeah.
So they're just listening to the Chicago blues music, regurgitating it, playing it back for you guys, and then you're hearing it without being aware of the original inspirations necessarily. That's mad, isn't it? We think that America dictates the taste, but what you're saying there is, for you anyway, it was British bands.
British bands, I fell in love with them. I Queen, even Led Zeppelin, so classic rock was like my introduction to music. And then they were all inspired. They were doing covers of rock and roll from the 50s. They were doing blues covers. So I became interested. I'm like, okay, who are these people that wrote these songs? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like Elvis and Carl Perkins. And then you pinpoint that, you discover, oh, in Memphis, Sun Studio. This is where they wrote all this great music, and they were there in this culture, this time. That fascinates me, because I feel like it's hard to pinpoint. There's not really a certain city that has that magic now.
Well,
like there's not one place, but each city has a certain magic, but it doesn't have that certain time where all these artists came together and create these excellent excellent music. Because you could work from your home, you could record an album at your home. You see what I mean? There's not like a specific place where they were like, oh, you like back then it's like, oh, you have to go to Sun Studio. You have to.
Yeah, so here it would have been Abbey Road in London,
Abbey Road,
the famous studio there. So interestingly now, so these days, certainly for country, Nashville is Music City, and maybe for normal music, if we could say that, or everything else, it's probably LA at the moment. But there is a thing around Memphis. Why do you think that this? And I've got a theory about this that my wife's given me.
Okay.
But the South of America is very much musical America, isn't it? It's where Memphis is in the South, Nashville's in the South. You're very South. You're pretty much on the limit of the South, deep South, we call it. Why is it the South? Do we know? Is there any reason?
Well, I mean, this is where American music was born. I recently performed in Mississippi, and on the Seine, you enter Mississippi, birthplace of American music.
Really? Yeah. They know they've got that reputation. Yeah, they're proud of that.
You just had all these incredible Black artists that were going through very rough times during the time period, and music was their outlet. Music was their home in heaven, and they expressed their pain through music. So you think about the history of America during that time and the division between the North and the South. Black music, they really expressed themselves through the blues to deal with what was going around them, to have a voice, especially during those very difficult times. So it's very inspiring that in this certain place, Mississippi, I went to Mississippi when I was 17. I went on a community service trip, and I was really excited because I'm going to the birthplace of American music. I did some community work in Jonestown, and that changed my life. Because it's so different from New York, and for me, it's like I said, it's not enough for me to play music. I want to go where my influences were. I want to breathe the same air. I want to be there and just feel the magic they felt and be inspired and do it my own way. And so I feel like in the South, you really meet like the heart of the American people. You see these people that have such beautiful hearts and grow up so simply, and they're very wonderful. I was just in Columbus, Mississippi. I played a show there. I was really excited to return there and play music. And I was about an hour away from Tupelo. I didn't get to go to Tupelo, but the first thing I said to the audience was, I am so honored to be here, because it doesn't matter what stage I'm performing in. It could be a big stadium, it could be a small stage. I feel the stage is sacred. I'm going to honor it. I'm going to do the best I can. And I said, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so honored to be in just an hour away from Tupelo, to be in this beautiful place where so many artists made music and the blues. And a lady came after my show and she was crying. She said, thank you so much for saying that, because people have this perception of the South, and they have this judgmental perception.
So this is another reason I'm interested in this topic, because it's not long when you look into America. It's not very long before you realize that your South is very much like our North, which is where I'm from. Yeah. And we have a very well-known band here that happened to form in my hometown called the Beautiful South. Wow. But they're a northern band of northerners mainly, not all of them. But the name is ironic. They don't mean the Beautiful South, because they're from the North. It's a sneering name. It's like saying, oh, because in England everybody thinks the South is beautiful, and it's I live here now and it's really not. But the funny thing is, when I've been doing all this research and this work and this writing this year, it does work in America. The South in America is genuinely beautiful, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
It's got the weather and the food, and it just desert roads and highways and Route 66, and it just seems the most impossibly exciting place.
That's why I was so drawn to it. I remember driving down Highway 61 for the first time, and I'm on the blues highway. You just feel the energy and excitement.
Yeah.
I'm like, here in this sacred land. And especially for people who really love and appreciate the music, it's really special. Like, it's so important to make these pilgrimages and see how the people you are inspired by, how they lived, what their environment was like, because it helps you understand them better and helps you have a greater appreciation. You're just not admiring from afar. You're actually in it and living it. And that's what I loved. I'm like, it's incredible.
It is incredible. So we talked earlier, I don't know if it was on the recording or not, but we did talk earlier about the internet and how it can bring people together. So if we're not for the internet, we'd not be seeing each other now. We're very difficult to record this conversation on the telephone. The internet brings people together. You know, people, I've got family members overseas, you know, it brings you together. But there's an element of it that keeps you apart. And I get the feeling, thinking about Tennessee and Nashville, and do I need to visit there, and when might be the best time to visit there, and why would I even want to do that? I tend to think that I don't need to do that anymore because I've got Wikipedia and ChatGPT and the internet, and I've got books. I'm perfectly capable of reading about Nashville. I've got all the music I could ever want. You know, there's somebody told me the other day, was it 5,000 or 50,000 songs get released every week? And that might have been worldwide. I'm not sure exactly what the parameters were, but there's almost too much music. I'm having to now narrow down the bands that I listen to and get involved with because it's so demanding on my time. I don't feel the need to be in Tennessee. But you're saying the opposite, aren't you? You're saying you kind of have to go there, or you haven't been, you can't understand it.
That's how I felt. I mean, this was my personal journey. I don't judge or like to dictate other people's journeys, but for me, because I felt such a personal resonance to this music, I felt like I had to be there. Like I just I felt I would, because when I would hear this music, especially blues, or the music from Sun Studio, I felt they were like the secret keys to the universe. I felt I had like, I feel like the more I listened to it, you figure more about life. And I just wanted to get as close to that as possible. It was just thrilling to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I wonder if so you're a musician primarily.
Yes.
Although evidently all musicians at some stage have to write some words as well. But you're primarily a musician, and you say one look at you to realize that you're quite an expressive artist. Whereas I am just a writer. You know, I literally it's a typewriter or a pencil and a book. That's a very different way of creating, and I just wonder whether there's something in that I'm more detached. I feel like I'm a spectator in life. That's my role. You are very much a participant, aren't you?
I love to experience life that way. I love to travel. Like I felt when I was 17, I felt I had to go to Sun Studio. When I was staying in Mississippi, Memphis was just about, I think, 30 minutes or an hour away, and I had to go there. I had to see Graceland, you know, I had to see Sun Studio. It was very important to me because I love this music. It's my life. I felt I had to experience it. And I think it makes you grow. The more you travel and you experience things, it makes you grow more. Yeah.
I can't, I mean, it seems logical, but I've got a very good friend who's, what I find is that people's friends don't like to be named, so I won't name anybody. Okay. We can name some people like Lola Kirk, for example, later on. But I'm used to having my name out and about and people talking about it, for better or worse, and quite often worse. But our friends don't necessarily like that kind of thing. So I do have a good friend. So she's a wine expert and she does a lot of traveling, right? She goes to vineyards and she writes for magazines and stuff. She's just come back from Washington, D.C. and tomorrow she's going to Switzerland. Today she was out in London watching a marathon. And I'm like, I haven't been out for 10 days. I have zero interest in going out of this house. I mean, I can talk to you here. I've got all my books. This is just a tiny fraction of the 1,000 books that we've got on site here. I've got a library membership where they post books out to me. They've got 15 miles worth of books. It's over 1 million books. I can just ask for them and they just arrive.
Wow.
Clearly, it's a different type of person, somebody who knows about wine and food and wants to travel and photograph things. We were talking about photography earlier, weren't we? you like to photograph your neighborhood and wherever you happen to be visiting.
Yeah.
There must be these two types of artists, and we're all introverts, right? You wouldn't look at you and say, wow, there's an introvert there.
Well, I mean, you look at someone like Emily Dickinson. She wrote all her poetry in her room. She didn't leave her confines. I mean, every
that's
artist.
more me, I think.
Yeah, you're the male Emily Dickinson. I mean,
wow, that's a great quote for the website, isn't it?
Yes, you could use it. It's yours. And you see Hemingway. He had to go to the cafes. He had to go write in Paris and I mean, he was all over in Cuba, Key West, and then you see Marcel Proust. He liked to write in his bed. I mean, every artist is different, right?
That's past perfect, isn't it? Especially on a cold day. I mean, you'd have to heat the house then. I'm not allowed to turn the heating on anyway because of the cost. So you just stay in bed with your laptop or a pencil, and that's what David Lynch would do. You don't need all this aeroplanes and stuff. So why what you could have gone to France in your imagination. You did through the films and the books. But there's something in you that said, right, I have to. It's not just, I'd quite like to go to France. I have to go to France. Then you ended up in England. Maybe we should talk a bit about England because I'm interested to know where you've been in England. I know you spent some time up north as well as in some very bizarre tiny villages in the middle of
very bizarre. I just know where my heart.
Not many people's heart would take them to Bedfordshire. I can tell you that.
Yes. But I had the idea. It makes me because I'm a very romantic person in my everyday life, and I feel like
really
life is
I didn't know.
Life should be one grand romance. I'm very strong with that. I think you could create beauty in your surroundings, and it's romantic. It doesn't have to be romantic. Love is romance for life, living experiences, and love too. Everything is beautiful, but in Bedfordshire, I had the opportunity to. I know, just
an opportunity. This is your opportunity of the day. The big opportunity was going to Bedfordshire
because I was alone in England. I was 22 years old. For me, this is my guidebook. You don't have to follow what I did, but for me, it was exciting. Bob Dylan says, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. So I really had no attachments. I didn't want to go back to America. I was really, my heart, I thought that I was going to live in Europe for the rest of my life, but life shows you different pathways, and that wasn't my course. But for me, it was, I had no place to live in London. I was just going back and forth through different places, and I got offered to stay in Bedfordshire. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like, I make it to turn like into a big romance. I was like, it's like Led Zeppelin, in the countryside writing their album, Bron Yair. And that's how, in my head, I was like, to help, because I was very young, dealing with a lot. So in my head, I was like, you have to romanticize it a bit and make it exciting. So I was like, I feel like, I'm going to write some music, be near the horses in the English fields. And
well, that's like Tennessee, the horses and all the cowboys and stuff. So we do have a tradition of this. So we have two types of recording artists here, I suppose. One is the kind of London artist or the Manchester artist, like the Beatles would go to Abbey Road.
Yes.
There were studios in Manchester where people like Joy Division and the Happy Mondays and all those kind of depressing bands would record music. And then there's the other kind. And what I think is Liverpool to an extent, but what I think is that the working class boys like the Beatles went to the cities and recorded there. And then you're talking about Led Zeppelin, and I know Lola Kirk is a very strong Zeppelin fan. There's a song she's got about Led Zeppelin's third album, and it's an amazing song. But her dad showed her, who obviously he's a drummer himself, her dad showed her Led Zeppelin, and she credits him with that introduction. He is British. But Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, these kind of people who were hanging around people like Richard Branson and Virgin Records, they recorded in the countryside. Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel famously has a studio today near Glastonbury where a certain Australian pop star has been recording her new album. And the middle class boys went to the countryside because they had the big houses, and Fleetwood Mac as well. So Mick Fleetwood, his job was to find these houses. The idea was that the whole band had to live together. They were very much into a hippie style of living. So Mick Fleetwood would drive around the English countryside looking for a house that with 10 bedrooms that they could afford. There's a lot of houses with 10 bedrooms. There's not very many houses with 10 bedrooms that Fleetwood Mac could afford back in the 60s. So there is this thing. So you thought, hang on a minute, if I go to the countryside, I'm going to be Led Zeppelin, Jimmy, and whoever else is in Led Zeppelin.
Well, not Led Zeppelin, but I would like I'll be following their footsteps. You know, I would be inspired the same ways that they were inspired in my own way. But yeah, because for me, it's exciting to visit the places where these artists were. For me, this like I just love it. I love it to see that. That's
so
me.
nice.
Yeah,
it's nice to see that, because we just think, oh God, it's Bedfordshire. You know, it's flat. It's a very long way from London.
It was like a nice rest from London, and it was just lovely. Rest, and I was the only American in this small town. And in the pub,
did you have the pink hair back then, or?
No, I had brown curly hair.
Okay,
pink,
so that would have been okay.
Pink came, New Orleans brought out the pink, but I was just a young lass. And actually, they had one pub in town, and in that pub, they have a plaque. It says Paul McCartney played "Hey Jude" for the first time in this pub. And I was like,
Bedfordshire?
Wow. Yeah, Bedfordshire. Yeah.
Who knew? I didn't know that. That's probably a lie. Did you think I just put that there to get the customers to come in? Or do you think that was real? I mean, what was Paul McCartney doing in this village in Bedfordshire? Trying his new material.
Yes, trying new material. Like the people wouldn't expect it, and just I can't even believe it. I'm gonna have to check this out later on. Do it. Yes,
we're gonna do a fact check on this interview because you're just talking nonsense.
I was staying in Harold. I think Harold, this the town, and Hamlet, Harold, and it was lovely. I was just such a spectacle because I was the only American there. I'm from New York. They were just so amazed. Like what are you doing here?
That's the question in my mind. It's what? There you go. I mean, you could have gone anywhere else. You know, I wouldn't have been having these questions. Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool.
I was just offered. It's like, do you want to spend a few weeks in Bedfordshire? And I was like, why not?
So it was Bedfordshire or New York, and you chose Bedfordshire.
Bedfordshire, yeah.
That's incredible. You're the only person in the world who would have made that choice, I would imagine. If you ask the people in Bedfordshire, in Harold, they'll say, yeah, I think I'll do New York, thanks. It sounds really cool.
But then a lot of people, like, even here, they're like, oh, why did you move here when you're from New York? I mean, it's different when you grow up in a certain place and you've had the experience. Yeah. Then if you're growing up in that environment, you want to experience something new. So it's different. Yeah. And then for people who haven't experienced New York, they should go to New York. But for me, I mean, I was attracted to these countries, France, England, because of the influence their artists and the music had on me. The British invasion, French New Wave, in Paris in the 1920s and 50s. So it was these specific things that drew me to these lands. I wanted to experience it as an artist in this century.
It's such a story. I know we're going to have to do more than one conversation here. We've already blasted through half the time budget. We do try and keep these to an hour because I just think people, you know, they can play and pause and come back, but an hour is a long time to sit and listen to somebody talking about themselves. There's a few questions we could get to. Are you able to talk? Is it too painful to talk about Bruce Springsteen today? Or are you? What's your feeling towards his shows in Manchester and England at the moment?
Oh, I'm trying to remember the exact moment because Bruce is so special to me because his songs, each one of his songs have a meaning to me in a specific point of my life. You know what I'm trying to say? Like every song, if Born to Run, I could remember the young girl in New York who wanted to escape New York, and I felt like I'm born to run too. I'm born to experience life in romance and music. So he was very influential because his songs were very poetic and they were these beautiful narratives. And I love that. I just love the stories that he wrote, and they were very beautiful and magical to me. And likewise, like France and like England, I felt that I had to make a pilgrimage to New Jersey as well. So a couple of years ago, I performed in Asbury Park and I went to Freehold. So it's not just a foreign lands. I had to see how Springsteen grew up. I wanted to be there.
Well, this is a whole new level. So I get accused by people I know, maybe my wife, of getting obsessed by artists or books. And you said this about your French books. If I like a book, I'll try and read everything by that person. If I like a song, I'll listen to an album, and I'll get all the albums, and that to me seems perfectly natural and logical, and it does to you as well, it seems. But you go that extra mile. It's like Hunter S. Thompson or somebody, you want to put yourself in that place. You're not happy with reading. And I'm trying, in all of this writing that I'm doing at the moment, I'm trying to figure out what is the difference between me, who I always had this option of doing the creative thing, but I knew financially it would be a mistake. And I didn't have any sort of family money, it was just a normal family, a bit like yours, it sounds. I knew that whatever I did, I had to make my own way somehow.
Yes.
And the easier option was to go to university. My dad was a teacher, and do the university thing and get a job in London and do that. And that's more or less what I did. But I always kept the writing going as a hobby. Whereas you've gone a different route in a way. You've just thrown yourself at the artistry and somehow figured out how to pay for it later. And so I can look at people like about Lily Winwood, whose dad is quite well known in certain places. Lola Kirk's got quite a well known dad. The very musical families. Yours sounds like a musical family. My family was not musical. They were very sensible and kind of normal. Is that the difference between us? Or is there something else there that's driven you, do you think?
Well, my family wasn't, my father, he played the Beatles songs on guitar, but I didn't come from a musical family per se. I was the only person that I knew at a young age. I love to express myself. I know I have this voice and I don't know how to use it. And then I would read these stories about these artists who would go to other places and make their own path. So, and I noticed like they left to different countries or, different cities. And I felt that was the way. I was just, because I didn't have a guideline or a roadmap. I knew I had to make it myself because it was very sensible too in my family, very important. Okay, you have to go to college, do this and that. And I did go to college, but that wasn't enough for me. I'm happy that I went, but I wanted to really just find artistic communities and like-minded people that really there were true artists and were really dedicated to their craft and to learning through life, through creativity and spirituality. So it was difficult for me. Like I said, I was dealing with these heavy emotions because I'm like, how do I do this? Because no one in my family has done this. And I feel this way as a young girl in the 21st century. So it seems like reaching sainthood. I felt like how do you reach this? How do you reach this? But you learn, you have to make it your own way. And
is it easier? You said, and you said it was quite difficult for you to leave New York as a 22-year-old. And okay, you've done college, but you've done college in New York. In England, generally people do college somewhere else because they want to have that experience. So you stayed in New York. Obviously, it's got a good colleges there. You stayed there, and then you thought, right, I'm off to Europe. That was a difficult thing to do for a girl back then. But all the people I'm thinking of right now are female, and I think, is it easier? Is it easier to be a creative person if you're a woman? When I think about Led Zeppelin, there's boys just being boys in a group. They're a gang of lads who went to school together. I don't know if they did or not. Certainly Black Sabbath did. Definitely Pink Floyd were at school together. Or they met very, very... Mick Fleetwood was not at school with his Fleetwood Mac people, but they all converged on a certain part in Chelsea and they got to know each other, and he got to know John Mayall, and they realized he could drum. He was so lonely at boarding school that he taught himself to drum in his own room. And he said, right, I don't care about this school. I don't care about my exams. I'm dyslexic or whatever it was he was challenging with. He learnt to drum. And when he got to London, he was the drummer that everybody wanted to talk to. But they're basically boys playing games and getting drunk, doing drugs.
Yes.
Whereas the females tend to be, these days, they're not in bands. You're not in band, are you? It's just you. You're the headline act, and you're on your own, and that's perhaps how you want it. But there's something there, isn't there, that the boys and the girls behave in different ways.
That's a very interesting point, because a lot of my influences growing up were very male, like Elvis, the Beatles, and I always admired how they grew up together and how they just made this music together, traveled together. And it was difficult for me as a Latina and also as a woman to find examples in music like this, because it was a boys club definitely back in the day, but
Absolutely.
you definitely had these incredible women like Janis Joplin, Nina
all the way
Simone,
through,
who stood on their own amongst these men and had this
and
voice
just
and
did
created
it.
change. And so there's many incredible women who during that time definitely stood out with their power and their voice and said something.
So I can't think of anybody in New York who sings with coloured hair without thinking of Cyndi Lauper. So
I love Cyndi.
She is still going. She was at Glastonbury last year, and she's just like an icon now. You know, do you think if you were offered a recording contract and girls just want to have fun, you could have been Cyndi Lauper? Do you think there's something else going on there, or is she as good as her reputation, or was she just lucky?
Well, I think
you make your own luck.
Well, I believe my recipe has been having faith, and I'm very spiritual. So I believe in the power of manifestation. So since I was little, I've always visualized the life I wanted to live. I dreamt about Paris through these books and through these visualizations, and also like just reading and absorbing all this material. I knew that one day I will live in Paris, and it happened. So I think with the power of intention, having intention and faith, and moving towards that goal, having steps every day, it leads you to your destiny and your path. And with Cyndi Lauper, I actually read her biography. Actually, my friend autobiography. My friend in Paris, when I was living there, she gave me her autobiography, and I read it, and I related to a lot of what she wrote about and how she grew up, and growing up in New York and being a woman and making her way as a individual and as a female, and just.
I'd love to read that book.
Yeah, you should read it. It changed my life. When I came back to America, I finished reading it, and it was just stunning. So it just warms my heart to know that there's other women that went through that too, and they're standing on their own, and they're writing their own music and having their voice and talking about their experiences.
There's some original voices there. Stevie Nicks has just popped into my head. You know, they're women who perhaps didn't have families, didn't have children, didn't get tied down. There's something in their background or the way that pushes them a different route. So Stevie Nicks very much blames Fleetwood Mac for not having a family. So she said there was never any time to have a family. Now, I actually think that's an excuse, because there's a lot of female acts who do have children and they just figure it out. You know, they take the children with them on tour. They get the partner to maybe do a bit of childcare occasionally. You know, there's ways to do it, and I think she's used that as an excuse, and she's become sort of the favorite auntie to her nieces now. But I think if Stevie Nicks does what Stevie Nicks wants, and if she wanted children, she'd have had children. It's as simple as that. But she's very bitter about this when she talks about Fleetwood Mac. I just wonder, is there something about these women, the very, very, very successful ones, like Madonna, for example, that they're just not quite clued up, they're not quite aligned with anything? There's something that they're searching for, if you see what I mean, that makes them like off the chart successful, like Beyonce, for example.
Yeah, well, first, I think primarily just expressing yourself as a woman and artist is very bold and beautiful. And I mean, it's interesting because I
think they're unhappy, aren't they? If they were happy, they'd sit down and drink cocoa and watch the Eurovision Song Contest, you know?
Well, I think when music, I feel, especially as a woman, we're taught, okay, you get married, have children, and then once you don't obey those rules, and you're considered weird or out there or strange. But I think there's many different types of women. It's just not not all women are going to follow that sensible, as they say, or not, or path. So I think people are just afraid of what they're not used to, you know, what seems different. And I've dealt with that because I wanted to live in Paris and go to England and have these experiences through the footsteps of my hero. So I felt very alone, but I knew I had to. If music is in your blood, if you feel it deeply, then nothing's going to stop you. You're just going to go with it.
I think that's fabulous. I think that's why that is a difference, because I've never. So I wrote an article recently about Nashville and Memphis, and you read this one. It was about the fact that, maybe Liverpool's a bit more like Nashville and this kind of thing. And what I was trying to do was map the US South onto the British North that I understand. And Liverpool, you've got people there now, it's still a music city. The Cavern Club's still there as a tourist attraction. You can go to John Lennon's house. There's somebody there, Rhiannon Downey, who sings with the Beautiful South now. She's their female voice, and she's Scottish. She lives in Liverpool, and she's playing her first headline act this year in Hull, which is where I'm from. So I'm going to see her in October in Hull, which I think is a bit more Memphis-y, because when I say that, I mean, not the blues thing. It's just, there's Nashville, which is Liverpool, which is a very famous place for the Beatles and other things. And, the guy did Ferry Across the Mersey and all that stuff. And then you've got Hull is a music city to us. So I was talking to my wife about this. So my wife, my brother, my best mate, and loads of other people were all in bands. They were all in bands.
Great.
They were never a solo artist. Every single pub has an open mic night every week, even now. There's so many venues, even now. Hull is very much a musical place. It was all sort of soft rock and not really blues, but it was all kind of middle of the road, rocky type stuff. But what I'm saying is I had the opportunity to be a musician. Everybody was doing it. And I never felt the need to do that. I was quite happy to go and watch these people play.
Right.
I'd go and support my brother and his band, and my mate was in that band, and their brother was the drummer. And they used to practice at a bike shop because that's the only space they could get. They owned the bike shop. So they moved the bikes to one side after hours and set up the drums and stuff. And I watched all this, and I never felt part of it. And I never wanted to be part of it. But I do like writing about those people like you, I suppose. And there's something, so that there is a difference there. I had the chance, I had the guitar, I went to guitar lessons with my brother, and I just wasn't feeling it. And I don't know what it is. There's something different.
We all feel called to do different things, and that makes you special as well, to have this power with your words to write about all these musicians and give them a voice and platform. So that's just as important and central. And we're thankful for writers like you that take the time and have the passion to do that.
Well, that's something that's comparatively new to me, but I was just talking to some friends about this recently, and there's a guy I know from years ago. We worked together in Manchester, and then we ended up at the same place in London together at the same time. We were both doing IT contracts, computer programming type work. And he said, "That's interesting, Paul. When I knew you 20 years ago, you were always talking about your books, and some of them are back there now. They're the newer ones. You were always talking about your books and stuff, but you were also always talking. I've got to make sure I'm in the camera eye. Also making noises about music and saying about a lot about music. And I guess it would have been Fleetwood Mac and just talking about them. But I never really thought of writing about them until very recently. And that's the change for me, has been realizing that I think you almost think to be able to write about music, you have to be able to play music. And I don't think that's the case anymore. In fact, what I am learning is that the less I know about America, the less I know about Tennessee and Memphis, the less I know about playing music, that objectivity is what is drawing people to my writing, because they're saying, look, somehow you understand us, Paul, but you're not part of this thing. You're not in this scene. You're not here. You're 3,000 miles away, but you really seem to understand what we're doing, and you get what we're trying to achieve. And I didn't think that was going to be possible until 3 months ago.
See, it's so special at each stage of life. We discover more about ourselves, and we get called to do different things. So that's special. That's really important.
Well, it's a crazy privilege for somebody to ask you to write about their music. As a fan, so I think it's as a fan who can write, and the way a British person writes about music if you look at the NME and some of the British music magazines, is very much not like how you guys would write about music.
Mhm.
You know, it's sarcastic, it's a little bit maybe cynical, it's dark, you know, it's rude, it's slightly offensive, it's different. And I suspect American music journalism is not like we would do it here.
Yeah, we all have our unique voices, each place.
It's strange though, isn't it? I think it's strange. So let's see. How are you happy to keep talking? We've got about 10 minutes or so maximum
Okay.
left. We can always come back, and I'm sure we will. Should we talk about the film club? Should we try and lighten it up a little bit?
Yes.
So I don't know what people are assuming about our relationship. I feel like I've known you for about 20 years.
I feel the same way.
How long have we known each other, Caroline?
Maybe
10 days?
I think
A
like
week?
ever since the film club started, mate.
It's about, well, we've seen one film, and it's a film every week.
Yes.
So it's not long. It's not very long, is it?
No, but it's I love that magical pull that the universe puts people with each other, because I just made the post on, because I'm a film lover. I love film, and I'm very passionate about it. So I watch all these movies by myself, and I felt, and I go to like the cinema and watch these classic films, and I felt I really wanted to talk to more people that have the same magnetic feel towards these classic old Hollywood films, these foreign films. And so I made a post about it. I was like, so I wrote it in my stories, and I said I'm interested in doing a film club. And then I was so pleasantly surprised about the response of how many people felt the same way. And I think that that's the power of music, or that's the power of just speaking up and just share and being like, I have this passion, I want to share it. And then people feel propelled too. They want to, like, I feel the same way too. And then you have this happy community. So we have our little happy film club.
Well, there's a couple of things to say about that. One is that I invited Emma Woodhouse, my friend from England,
Yes.
and she was my first interview topic. I should send you the link to her interview, because she's an expert in Mary Carr, who was a Victorian gangster, female gangster. So I thought Emma would like this. She's a teacher as well.
Nice.
So it's me and Emma, and then all of these kind of crazy, quite sort of half-famous Americans who are all very successful and creative, and me and Emma are just kind of sat in cold England wondering what's going on. And the first film that you sent us, just for the people know, was a film with Frank Spencer's wife on a bicycle tour of northern France.
Yes.
I mean, how is that a cinema classic?
I'm so peculiar with my taste, but that's a classic British film.
It was in colour, at least.
That was a classic British film. It was fascinating because it's not a typical film noir. I think we talked about it's like a film blanc, because in the gangster films, you know, you're in the dark alleys, you're in the smoky bars, murder happens.
I love all that.
That's my jam too. And
Bugsy Malone,
you have the black and white, but this is color. They're in the countryside.
Hot day. It's lovely weather, clear hot day.
These two British ladies, they're on their bicycles, and you know, they're just exploring the French countryside, and then all this madness happens, and one of them gets murdered, and the other one is like, what happened to my friend? And then so it's interesting because first, in film noir, we're gonna go into it, there's like the femme fatale, there's the gangsters. But it was really these two. There's the woman, the brunette, who was trying to figure out the murder. It wasn't like a male, and she was from England. You know, she wasn't the typical stereotype of a femme fatale. She was just with her friend, and her friend gets murdered, and she was like, what happened to my friend? So it's a lot of differences between film noir and this film, which I found it was refreshing because it was such an interesting take, even though it had a slow pace.
It is slow.
It's slow.
Let's be honest.
But I think that adds to the factor of like when you're trying to search for something, like it just added to the suspense. It was like very Hitchcockian in that sense, where you just didn't know what was going to happen at any moment. Like, could she trust this Frenchman that said he was with the police? Was he really with the police? Was he the murderer? And then it was very intense. Like each person that she interacted with, they could have potentially been the murderer. You know, the other woman that was from England, that was the older woman that was helped her to like
She was a
drove
bit
her.
weird, sinister.
She was weird. She was very sinister. And then you wouldn't expect the murderer to actually be the murderer towards the end. You're like, okay, this guy is very bizarre and very scary. That was very intense, the final scenes. So I think the film had to had that slow pace because you didn't know who was the murderer. But the brunette did something, we don't know. But it just added to that intensity. So it was very Hitchcockian. And then but it was in broad daylight. It wasn't at night. The murder was
absolutely. It's in the woods,
in the woods. So I appreciate that aspect. Like this is a very refreshing take to the cinema.
Yeah. No, it was interesting. I my wife was watching it with me, and she's very thankful for you to suggest that. I think she enjoyed it more than I did. I think I might have been messaging the film group while it was on. I was so bored. I don't know what's going on, but this is the most boring thing I've ever experienced. And I suspect it's much better in the cinema where you've got the big screen, the loud noise, the loud volume, and you're physically in a dark room and you can't leave. I suspect it would have been a lot more powerful in a cinema environment.
That's why I love going to the cinema because
it's amazing, isn't it?
That's the proper way to watch a film. And in your home, it's comfortable, but then you can also get distracted. And once you're in that space, it's like going to France or going to England for me. It's like if you want to see a film, go to the cinema. It's like
I'll let you off. I'll do the cinema. I'm prepared to go to the cinema. It's a 1 mile walk from my house.
See, I live near the Britannia Theater. Check this out. Every Sunday at 10 a.m. they show classic films. So I don't go every Sunday, but there was a time where I went every Sunday. I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna show like Casablanca, or they're gonna show, Some Like It Hot. They would show these classic films. So I would do that. And it's just the best way to watch these incredible films.
No, it really is, especially with the sound quality now and the screens and so on. Have you seen Sinners yet with Lola Kirk in it?
I have not seen it yet.
Oh, that was because I didn't know what to expect. I'm not familiar with the director. I'm not familiar with that lead actor who's quite famous. I can't tell you what I knew about it except that Lola. I was researching Lola for an article or two that I'm doing.
Yes.
And I figured out she was in it.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
know what it was, what it was about. Becky said it's sort of a horror thing, maybe, and it's in the. But the funny thing is, it's basically set not quite, but between Nashville and Memphis.
Oh.
In Clarksdale or something.
Clarksdale.
In the kind of Clarksdale in the 20s, 30s, which is my period for British gangs, which is on the shelf somewhere. And I knew about Al Capone and stuff. So these two guys are in Al Capone's gang. They're in Chicago. They leave Chicago and they settle in Clarksdale, and they set up a business. And the purpose of the business is to make one of these black nightclubs called a juke.
Ooh.
And they set up this nightclub, and you think, okay, this is fine. It's like a Western, And then at halfway, in comes Lola Kirk from the Ku Klux Klan with her husband, and stuff starts kicking off. I don't want to say too much, but it's just like From Dusk Till Dawn. The whole film changes in a second, and it becomes something completely different. And I was just sat there with my mouth open, going, "This is unbelievable." And then when I came out, I realized that everybody's talking about it as the film of the last 10 years, and that's not part of a franchise or anything. It's the biggest film that's not part of a franchise in the last 10 years in terms of box office. It's absolutely unique, and it's one of those films where you sort of think, that's something special. It's a bit different, this one.
Oh, I have to see it then.
It's just the music. You like the music? You can get the soundtrack on Spotify. It's got a country and western kind of soundtrack to it.
Oh, nice.
And these other heavier songs as well. It's a very dark film, but it's amazing. So we did get to talk about Sinners and Lola. I knew we would at some point. Well, we've got loads of questions left, but I feel like we should start to wind this down.
Wind it down.
It always takes at least 5 minutes to say cheerio to people. So cheerio. It's easy to say one word, isn't it? But it's never quite that easy. So I've got to stop the recording in a second. So Caroline, is there anything else you'd like to say about your music, or where can people find your music? Obviously, it's Spotify and Apple Music and everything else.
Yes. I love Instagram, and that's where we connected.
Yeah,
So
me too.
I post a lot on Instagram, as you know. So it's Cotto, Cotto.Caroline, and I use that platform the most. So I feel,
yeah, me too.
and I feel if people want to reach, I love talking to fans and people. So you could reach out to me and send me a message. And but I'm all over social media, and like you said, I'm all the streaming platforms, and
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, Instagram's great for musicians. I'm realizing this because it started as a photography platform, effectively for photographers. I think originally, the logos are basically a camera, but now you can bring in music from Spotify and put that over the top of a picture.
Exciting. Yes,
that's great for you, isn't it? You can put bits of your own music on there.
I love it. It's like it is. I love expressing myself like through the film. I love creating the reels, the photography, and you're really creating your own history and like narratives through Instagram. I love the platform.
Yeah, me too. And people say things about social media, but I think as long as you, I mean, we've been messaging a lot, haven't we? Maybe we should ease off slightly. But if you can manage your relationship with it, and you can take breaks from it, I found the DM, the direct message, the most fascinating part of it. It's surprising who will reply to your direct messages sometimes.
I've formed a lot.
Has Bruce ever replied to you, or?
I sent him like little love notes. No, but I've met a lot of incredible musicians that I work with through Instagram, just reaching out.
Yeah.
And just sending your music.
Musicians seem particularly open to that. I know from people I've been working with that, they'll message a producer or a studio head or something and go, "What about it? Do you want a coffee? I'm in Memphis or I'm in Nashville," and it just happens, and it's so nice. And it's one of the ways we were talking earlier about isolation due to the internet. It's one of the ways that the internet can bring people together, actually.
Yes, it's I think it's wonderful.
It is. What a great advert for Meta Group there, and Zuckerberg. He's such a nice man, isn't he? Right, I'll just stop the recording and then we can say cheerio. But yeah, this will be up tonight pretty much as soon as I can get it off Google. I'll stick it on YouTube and also on the Substack as well. And we'll talk again, I'm sure. We've got a film to watch this week as well. So yeah.
With the piano player, a true photo.
Indeed. And we've got the whole world. Anybody who watches this can join in and watch the piano player.
Oh yes, and I like to say, if anyone would like to join the film club, you are open. Just send me a message and join us. Join the Cinephiles. So
the only catch is you have to be on Instagram, right? It's an Instagram message group, basically.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Okay.